Wow, I don't even know how to start this episode, Dom.
Yeah, sour
I'm so
grapes.
flustered right now.
Back to back, we're starting episodes with you flustered.
Yeah, like I don't understand. I guess knockdowns have to be maybe you have to be knocked into the Earth's center crust, the
Right.
mantle core.
Yeah.
You have to be knocked deeper than the bodies that get laid to rest in this
Sure.
country.
Sure.
I don't know. I'd like to know what the definition of a knockdown is because I clearly saw two, but apparently I don't know what I'm looking at. Apparently, a knockdown is not a punch landing to a body hitting the floor. Apparently, that's
Right.
not
Yeah.
knocking your opponent down to the ground is not a knockdown.
Right.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Below Average Joe's MMA show recap edition. My stepdad is outside mowing the grass, so if you hear the mower, that's why, and he's
Mind your
very
business.
close right now. But yeah, we're doing this a day late. I was traveling. I visited my brother out in Cleveland, Ohio. So shout out to him. He lives out in the country. He's got two little kids. There was nowhere to record a podcast at, nor was I going to do that while I was there. But that's why we're bringing this to you on a Tuesday. And yeah, UFC 291, Bellator versus Rizin 2, a very just all time combat sports weekend. You had Terrence Crawford put on perhaps the best boxing performance I've ever seen live against Errol Spence Jr. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We don't do the boxing. Dominic says, fuck all that shit. MMA it is. Dominic, how was the weekend for you? How was the viewing experience? You had a great betting weekend. I'm sure the vibes were at an all-time high for you for this year.
Yeah, it was a great weekend for sure. It started with, golf in the morning, which is always fun, and it helps when you play good. Thank God I played a really good round of golf that morning, so that set the vibes. Although the sun kind of wrecked us, so I kind of just laid on my ass all day in between until the fight started. And then we got another great card. We've had back-to-back banger UFC pay-per-views with lots of action, lots of finishes. So it was a very good weekend. Quality time spent with friends, of course. Noah's back in the studio, quality time with him, and I get to see him in person for what feels like the first time in forever in just a matter of a few short days. So it's going to be a great weekend getting into what is a great week, followed by another great weekend in Nash Vegas. Noah, how are you doing? How was your weekend? The viewing experience, as you said, was not easy, but you made it happen, and that's what matters in this game.
Yeah, I was able to make it work for the UFC 291 and Spence versus Crawford. Unfortunately, I was not able to watch Bellator versus Rizin 2, so Dominic will be carrying the load, so to speak, for that
No
part of the
pressure.
show. No pressure at all, because he definitely watched every single fight from start to finish.
Top to bottom.
But no, the viewing experience basically went as such. Two fights, we'll just say, was at a beat-ups. Pretty much every other fight until the co-main and main event was on my phone by a fire. Co-main and main events were in the hot tub on a big screen TV with no commentary because we
A
had
little bit
music
of
playing.
everything, man.
So really just a diverse viewing experience. But I got to see everything outside of the only fight I didn't get to see was Roman Kopylov and Claudio Ribeiro. Sounds like that was a nice win for Kopylov. But I don't imagine we would be really talking about that. So maybe I shouldn't have even brought it up and just pretended because you guys would have been none the wiser.
Well,
anyways, Dominic, now's a good time for everybody to follow us, to subscribe, to like, all that stuff on all the various platforms that we're on, because the content, it is a changing.
it's August.
Yep, it's August. We are very quickly approaching the 3-year anniversary of the show. What a time it's been.
Mm-hmm.
Me and Dominic have grown up through this game.
Mm-hmm.
When we started this thing, Dominic, we were but just two dumb guys that had a bond and a love for MMA.
Yeah.
And 3 years later, we are, well, still those guys.
Yeah.
A lot of growth.
Yeah.
But the content's going to change ever so slightly. It'll still be the same format you see now. However, imagine this long form podcast just cut up into clips and out at various points in the week. That's pretty much it. I mean,
Hmm.
I always go long winded in these explanations, Dom, and it's so simple.
Yeah. YouTube, you're getting clips at a more
Yep.
timely fashion. If you like
Yep.
listening to long form episodes, you can follow us on audio and get it there the same times on Fridays and
Yep.
Mondays.
Yep. Spotify, Apple, all that. TikTok will remain the same. We're loving the trivia we've been putting out. Seems like a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people are liking that. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at the BAJ MMA. Twitter, hopefully we can start cranking out some Twitter spaces
Mm-hmm.
as kind of instant recaps when big cards come about. Also, Dominic, we will be in Nashville this
Mm-hmm.
weekend. I know we're not previewing that card today, but if any of you guys happen to be there, see us out and about, come up, say hi.
That would be quite a moment, wouldn't it?
It would be. I've yet to really have that, and I don't
Yeah.
know how I'd quite react to it. But so if I act a little strange, just
That's why. Yeah.
that's why. But
Yeah.
no, it'd be cool if anybody just happened to see us, just say what up.
Mm-hmm.
We can hang out, get fucked up. I don't know. We'll
Yeah.
find out wherever the wind takes us.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun. I think that's pretty much it, Dominic. Did I cover everything?
Let's recap it, my friend.
Yeah, and I know we kind of said this, but this will be pretty much just all fight recap. We know there are some fight announcements that have came out over the last couple days, but we will save those
Mm-hmm.
for our preview episode on Friday. Any news that comes out between now and then will also be on there. Just really wanting to stick to the recapping of UFC 291 and Bellator versus Rizin 2 because we're getting it out a day late and all
Yep.
that. So, Dominic, with that being said, your main event, Justin Gaethje, is the new baddest motherfucker. He knocked out
Oh.
Dustin Poirier with a head kick. Something about them head kicks out in Salt Lake City. He
Yeah.
gets it done 1 minute on the dot in the second round. This was a rematch, Dominic. We knew that. That was the story going in. Dustin Poirier had been able to put away Justin Gaethje in the first encounter back 5 years ago, basically. Gaethje comes in here with the highlight reel kick to Dustin Poirier, puts Poirier away, the first man to really knock out Dustin Poirier since Michael Johnson, who I
Yeah.
believe was the guy who welcomed Poirier to 155 pounds. So not quite a sight you're used to seeing here with Poirier staring up at the lights
Mm-hmm.
with such a highlight reel fashion. And I'll ask you this, just to kind of get the conversation rolling. How did you score that first round? How did you feel like the fight was going prior to that highlight reel finish? And ultimately, what does this win kind of mean for the career, the legacy of Justin Gaethje in that BMF title?
Yeah, so the first round was close. It was competitive. It was fun. I mean, really, what more did we expect out of these two? That was pretty much the fight we expected. I think I leaned Dustin, just more clean shots, more of the bigger moments, but Gaethje definitely landed
Gaethje
good
came
shots
on
as
late.
well.
He came
Yeah,
on late, but
came on late.
I also scored it for Poirier, I will say. And
Hmm.
I wasn't listening to commentary or anything, didn't have any crowd noise. That was how I scored it. But I also did have a betting bias, so I mean,
Sure,
I'll admit that. But go ahead.
sure. And I saw people scoring it for Gaethje. I don't think you're wrong either way, to be honest. But yeah, I had it for Dustin. And then, you get 1 minute of the second round. It was looking like it was going to be much of the same. A very fun round, another fun 5 minutes. And then bam, the head kick heard around the world. Back-to-back main events in Salt Lake in via nasty, brutal head kick. They were comparing the two, how similar they both fell down. I think
Yeah.
Leon's landed a little bit more flush, was a little bit more insane, but it was just an amazing moment. I never would have thought I'd see Justin Gaethje get a head kick knockout. I know the guy, all he does is knock people out, but it's with his hands, not with his feet. So that's what
Right.
caught me off guard so much. And to see Dustin Poirier go down like that was something we're not used to seeing, as Noah alluded to. So it was just a massive, massive win for Justin. I know it had to pain Jorge Masvidal to put that BMF belt around Gaethje's shoulder because he's buddies and tight with Dustin, so that kind of sucks for him. But Gaethje is the BMF. He's got the shiny silver belt, and I think this win earned him that next in line opportunity for that shiny gold belt following Oliveira and Makhachev 2 in October. This was huge for Gaethje's legacy. He gets another performance bonus. He literally has more bonuses than he does have fights inside of the company.
Crazy
No one
stat.
else can say that.
Crazy stat.
But the highlight reel. What more can you even say about this?
Yeah, and I want you to hold that thought about kind of what's next for him fighting for that gold.
Sure.
I that is something I do want to touch on because I don't think it's super clear what direction he may go, but obviously that one is up there on the list of options. Yeah, Gaethje looked he looked really good here, and I leaned Poirier pretty heavily in this fight, and it really all came down to you expect this fight to be a war. You expect this fight to really go back and forth. Anything can happen, of course, and it did. It was sort of a anything can happen type moment. But I put my trust in the consistency of Poirier in those kind of fights, the wars, the fights that go longer. Seems like he kind of keeps himself more composed more often. I know with Gaethje and his partnership with Trevor Whitman, that's been a huge focus of Whitman's to try to make Gaethje control his chaos. And he's done a great job of it. You look at some of the fights he's had with like Tony Ferguson and whatnot, and you can clearly see the evolution of the game of Justin Gaethje. But then you look at like when he fought Charles Oliveira, sometimes those old habits die a little hard. And here it didn't. He stayed patient, he stuck to the game plan. And it comes off almost like, with the head kick finish like it was, it sort of comes off like, oh, just like a Hail Mary kick, right? Like just, he just went for the Hail Mary, landed it, whatever. But I think there's a little more to it. I think it was set up very beautifully. I think you could see him sort of setting that up through those first 6 minutes. And I mean, Poirier even gave him credit. He couldn't really say anything. So it is kind of a big deal for Gaethje's legacy, I think. I know we've kind of made fun of the BMF title, and I've even said, like, why is this title attached to this fight and all that? But I think if you're going to do a BMF title, do it again, especially. It's nice to kind of get something like this in the fight, whether it's a war or you get that highlight reel finish, because the first fight, obviously Masvidal dominated Nate Diaz, but obviously it ended with a doctor stoppage, not the way you kind of want to end a fight that's supposed to determine the BMF, So I think it was good for that title if you're going to do it. The UFC did their best to sort of make it feel like a big deal. You had that pre-fight promo package like that was released before the fight with Mike Tyson narrating. I thought that was very cool. I could nitpick it and be like, okay, Mike Tyson's talking about how he was at one point the baddest man in the world. Well, that's because he was the heavyweight champion of the world. So, like, wouldn't technically John Jones be into BMF? Yeah, I mean, I could nitpick it, but I'm not going to because I thought it was well done. I thought they did their best to make it worthwhile. I still don't think it was needed. I don't think we ever really need to see it again.
Sure.
But Dominic, that kind of leads to the question of what's next for Justin Gaethje, because it does seem like he is in a good spot to kind of wait this out, let Charles fight Islam Makhachev in October in Abu Dhabi, and then slide right into the next challenger. Especially if Islam were to win. Now, if Charles wins, then you're looking at a rematch of a fight that Charles took Justin out in one round. Has Gaethje really earned that rematch opportunity? You also have Alexander Volkanovski really trying to go back up to 155 pounds. And Dominic, let's look at the fight we just had. It's 1-1 between Justin Gaethje and Dustin Poirier. The idea of doing a trilogy seems very appealing as well. And who's to say you can't have Gaethje defend the BMF title, right? So a lot of options here. So are you still very committed to, like, you believe he will be the next challenger no matter who wins in Abu Dhabi in October? Or do you think there's some, if Charles wins, maybe he doesn't. If Islam wins, he does. Like, how do you kind of view him moving along here?
I feel pretty confident that that's it. I think that's what he wants. That really is what leads me to feel that way strongly, is that he wants to be a champion before he hangs it up. It's been very clear during his career that that's what he wants. I feel like if he doesn't fight for the title next, the only other option is actually Conor McGregor. I think that would be the fight that would happen if he's not fighting for the title. Conor called him out, was going on and on and on about it. You know how Conor is on big pay-per-view fights, especially when they're in his division. Poor Michael Chandler. This guy just can't catch a break because he's just catching strays from Dustin Poirier calling him a bitch. And Conor said, forget about Michael. I want Gaethje. And the poor guy's just so nice. Can't get a hug from nobody. It's crazy. So that's the fight that'll happen if Gaethje does not fight the winner for the title. But I think that's what's next. I think I'd say 95% he's fighting for a title next. 5% he's fighting Conor McGregor maybe at the end of the year.
Wow, I'm kind of shocked those are your top two options because I think that Conor McGregor fight's a pipe dream. I think that's no chance of happening. Conor does this every time there are people at lightweight, welterweight that are in the title picture, are in a big spot. You always see the tweets afterwards when someone wins in either of those weight classes. It's a lot of fighters talking about what a performance it was, or congratulations, champ, or whatever. And then on the broadcast, you'll see Conor's tweet pop up. That's like that's small. That's easy money. That's feed him to me, whatever. Always trying to insert himself into the conversation. And I mean, credit to him for doing that. He'll even do it for the featherweights. He'll be like, this is the weight class I once, it's still my title, and it's like, what, buddy, have you seen your head? Like, he ain't getting back to 145 pounds. With that being said, I think that fight will never happen. I don't even think Gaethje, I kind of believe him when he says,
he can't stand him.
Yeah, I kind of believe him when he's like, I don't want to fight someone who's on steroids. Like, I'm not accusing Conor of anything. I'm just saying I sort of believe that Gaethje really won't fight him. And I know that sounds crazy because everybody always wants that fight. And especially with Conor feeling almost more vulnerable than ever, you almost feel like that's the biggest fight you can get money-wise. And I wouldn't say it's the hardest fight you can take. It seems like a match made in heaven, but I sort of believe Gaethje. Maybe I'm naive for doing so. The title fight is interesting, Dominic, because I think if Charles wins, I think Alexander Volkanovski is taking that fight. I don't think it's Justin Gaethje. I don't really see the reason to do that rematch. I know Charles is getting a rematch with Islam after getting one win in between, but I don't know. Like, I don't see the interest in running that fight back. And trust me, I love that first fight.
Oh, yeah.
That one rounder between Charles and Gaethje is the fight I probably watched the most ever.
Yeah.
I've watched that fight so many times. So would I be opposed to seeing it again? No, but I don't really see the people calling for it. And I think if Charles wins, I think that Volkanovski fight feels like a big deal. I know that a lot of people expect Volkanovski, if he were to go back up, to rematch Islam. But, Charles is a guy who, yes, he lost his title, but he had really wiped through a lot of the division, a lot of the top five. So it almost feels more of an earned super fight because Volkanovski's done the same at 145 pounds. Or, of course, you could do a trilogy between Islam and Charles if Charles were to win.
True.
I don't think Gaethje, is the top option. If Islam wins, Islam seems to be kind of fighting twice a year. That seems to be kind of what we're doing right now. So then you expect him to kind of come back and fight around February, March, something like that. Maybe UFC 300, maybe. I don't know. If he were to do that, maybe Volkanovski's able to fight him a second time and in between get an Ilia Topuria fight in.
That's what I think's happening for Volk.
Yeah. So it's possible. And then if not, you probably have Gaethje in there. And Dominic, I think the UFC are going to want to put Justin Gaethje in a title fight, not for the reasons you're thinking. I don't think this has anything to do with what Justin Gaethje wants. Because I don't think the UFC really abide by the Gaethje in a lot of ways. Yeah, he just won the BMF title, but it's not like an actual title.
Sure.
He can't call any shots here, in my opinion, like at least in the UFC's eyes. That's what I think they sort of how they look at the situation. But Dominic, if you don't do Gaethje versus Islam, then you really are staring straight at a trilogy between Gaethje and Poirier.
Mm,
And if you have Gaethje defend the BMF title, all of a sudden, Dominic, you're looking at pay-per-view points for a
mm.
champion who's defending a title.
That's true, because it's never been
UFC
defended, right?
UFC ain't gonna do that.
Yeah.
They ain't gonna do that. So that's why I think there's going to be a push for the UFC to kind of get Gaethje in there with Islam if Islam beats Charles. If he doesn't, I don't know. I don't know what they'll do if push comes to shove and Gaethje's not fighting for the lightweight title in his next fight.
Mm-hmm.
They may also, I could see the UFC really wanting to push Poirier to go up to 170 pounds to take on, like,
Sure.
if Colby Covington were to beat Leon Edwards, all of a sudden you got that fight at 170 pounds. I don't know. I feel like the UFC really don't want to do that trilogy between
Yeah.
Poirier and Gaethje, even though it would deliver. It just headlined to pay-per-view. I don't think they want to treat this BMF as they want it to be a step below their championships,
Yeah.
but a
Yeah.
step above your average fight.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of a hard line to draw in the sand, but I think that's the way they're going to move forward.
Sure.
So it's a really wait and see right now.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat in terms of like that trilogy. And I don't think Gaethje, he's not a guy that fights 3 or 4 times a year, so he's going to have no issue waiting it out, seeing what's going on,
sure.
weighing his options. So yeah, there's plenty of things that we have to wait and see what happen before we get a really clear conscience on what's next.
Do you believe, like, if we never see the trilogy between those two, does it feel like something is missing? Like, does it feel like there's enough there? You have the 1-1, both ending and finished. Do you feel like we need to see who gets the edge in the series overall? Like, is that something, if we never see it, it feels like we missed out?
I think to a certain extent, yeah, I think it would suck. Like, again, I don't need to see it immediately, but before they both hang it up, it would be nice. Maybe that's even the retirement fight for them both or something like that, because they're two guys that don't want to hang around forever. That would be cool. It wouldn't be like, I always say all the time, it sucks that we're never going to get the Connor and Nate trilogy. I always thought that was something that like needed to happen.
Mhm.
This one, I don't feel quite on that level, but selfishly, of course, I would want to see it. It's 1-1, 2 finishes each. And you know how that usually works. It happened with DC and Stipe, for example. The third fight was just a 5-round great fight. Imagine a 5-round straight 25 minutes between these two. It'd be a fight of the century type fight. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we do get that. But I don't think if it doesn't happen, I'm not going to lose sleep over it.
I guess I won't lose sleep over it, but the fight I want the most is this to be run back. I do. You know how I feel about immediate rematches. It's like not something I usually call for or clamor for, but we're not talking about a real title here. We're talking about the BMF. These guys have delivered nothing but exciting fights. You gave them that rub of being in a main event without a actual title in place.
Yeah.
So they're really kind of cemented as made guys. Like, these are guys that can carry a show.
Oh, yeah.
So imagine putting those two as like the feature bout at UFC 300, let's just say. And if you do it like that, you probably don't even have to do the BMF nonsense. You can probably just make it like that's your third fight on the card.
Yeah.
And I just think that there's a lot that I just want to see, because like this one ended so abruptly.
We really did.
And, like, it was great for the 6 minutes, but it happened so quick. I would just like to see how Poirier could come back from it, see if he could still prove to be the better fighter.
Yeah.
And for Gaethje, can he double down on that performance and do
Sure.
it again? And by winning against Poirier a second time, then I think you clearly have lined up for him to take on whoever is the lightweight champion at that point in time. But I just with Gaethje already having 2 title fights that he lost both. I know Poirier has done the same. I'm not exactly like just I don't get revved up at the idea of either one of those guys being in a third title fight, especially against Islam Makhachev, who I know has a lot of differences from like Khabib and whatnot, but it just, it doesn't feel like super winnable fights for either guy. And Do we really need to see it? That's sort of my mind. Like, I'd be excited for it if it gets announced. It's just
Right.
not my top option. My top option is to see the trilogy.
Run it back.
Don't even care about the BMF. I know some people will be like, well, you got to put the BMF on the line because if Dustin wins, then he's the BMF.
Yeah.
That's what I say. Get it out of here.
Just
I don't
give
care.
you the fight, right?
I mean, the BMF's cool. Like, I kind of do like, we kind of have it's winning me over somewhat with, like you were saying, Dom, maybe when Gaethje retires, you do it a third time. The UFC will never do it like that. They'll probably have him defend it, and then it's going to get really wonky and weird.
Yeah.
And we'll be like,
it's going to become the new weight class.
Yeah, it's like, why did we even do this? But it's cool. Like, they're kind of building something there. Like, Masvidal put the belt around them. Like, it feels like kind of a club of some sort. Like a one percenter club, of guys who really just put it all on the line. But yeah, I think that's all I have to really say about that fight. Anything else for you, Dom?
To the co-main.
To the co-main we go, Dominic. In light heavyweight action, Alex Pereira, in his debut at 205 pounds, gets the nod over the former light heavyweight champion, Jan Blachowicz. But Dominic, it was a split decision. Very interesting fight here. I said going in, this was my most anticipated fight of the weekend, even though I knew there was a good chance it would not deliver. And I'm here to tell you on this recap on Tuesday that both those things checked off.
Yeah.
It delivered on my anticipation of finding out how Pereira would fill out at 205 pounds, how he would look against bigger competition, not having to drain himself. It also delivered in that it didn't really deliver. It wasn't that great of a fight.
Wasn't great.
Wasn't great, but I want to ask you how you scored it watching it live. I know surprisingly, and maybe you won't feel that surprised, seems like everybody I see that's reputable, that post a lot about what their decision making or the way they score fights or whatever, seems like pretty unanimous for Alex Pereira. I'm seeing online.
Yeah.
Even though it felt to me while watching it live very close.
Yeah, sure.
How did you score it? What did you think of the fight? How did you think Alex Pereira looked at 205 pounds? And what kind of questions do you have moving forward as he hopefully takes on Jiri Prochazka for that vacant title? So I know I asked you a lot of questions, but take it away.
Yeah, so I was obviously 1-1 going into round 3. That part's easy to discuss. Round 3 to me was the damage over control, pretty much is what it came down to. Now, it was close. Like, it wasn't like Alex was significantly out striking and out damaging Jan in the third round. It was close. Jan held his all in there, which I was quite surprised at because it looked like at the end of round 2 he was donezo. I thought Alex was gonna get a big time knockout in the third round, even, to be quite honest. But I think both guys were getting very tired at altitude. The grappling in the first round took a toll on both of them. But yeah, the bigger shots, the more shots were landed to me, to the eye, were by Alex. And, a takedown at the end with 40 seconds left with no damage done, just laying there for Jan, I don't feel like was enough to get it done. So I felt, and this is betting bias aside because I did bet on Alex, I felt like it was the right call. I mean, had Jan won, I wouldn't have been surprised, because the striking was relatively close. He had the takedown. But to me, it felt like the right guy won here. And I know Jan felt otherwise, and he's had a very bad run these past 2, the fight with Magomed with the draw and whatnot. So I feel for him. But this is a huge win for Alex. It wasn't as exciting as maybe we had hoped, but I think there were still questions that he answered. I mean, he showed that he, obviously got taken down in the first round, but he was able to get up. He did decent takedown defense in rounds 2 and 3. I know he got taken down at the very end there, like I was mentioning. So there's still stuff that I think need to be worked on. Again, this was his 10th MMA fight ever. And, luckily for him, he's not fighting a grappler in that title fight with Jiri. It is a crazy wild striker. That matchup is so fantastic to me. I can only hope that that is what comes next. But all in all, I feel like the right guy won. He answered some questions, and I'm excited to see him against Jiri. He filled out great. I mean, look, did you see in 12 hours went all the way back up to like 230 almost? Yeah. I mean, the guy is a light heavyweight. I don't know how he was ever at 185. I'm pumped to see what he can do, what he can make of the light heavyweight division.
Yeah, kind of crazy. He said he wants to take one more fight at light heavyweight, which we assume will be for the vacant title, and then he wants to move back down
Yeah,
and
and
fight Adesanya in that trilogy,
yeah.
which I know Dominic's always already said he doesn't really need to see it. So I'm sure I know you're like kind of like, no, buddy,
I
don't
don't
do
think he's
that.
getting back down there anyway.
Yeah, so this fight was interesting because again, I don't have my phone by me. I'm in the hot tub, right? I'm just watching. I'm just in the moment.
Mm,
Have no idea what anybody's tweeting about, how anybody's scoring it. But yes, you're right. The first two rounds, very easy to me
yeah,
in that hot tub to score. Jan Blachowicz gets the takedown in round one, really rides that thing out. Uh, Pereira, I thought showed great submission defense. I thought he
sure.
showed to
Yeah, I
be
forgot about that.
defensively responsible. Yes, his takedown defense will still kind of make you wonder how he will fare against some of the better wrestlers of the division. But Jan Blachowicz, I would argue, is probably one of the better
Oh
offensive
yeah,
wrestlers in the division, especially if you look at the elite. I mean, who else are we really talking about
it's
at the
Magomed, right? That's really
yeah,
it.
like that's I mean, who that's what I'm saying. It's like there's not a ton of matchups here that it feels where like he would be super
Yeah,
vulnerable in that
exactly.
area. And yeah, he took him down. I thought Pereira showed a lot of improvements in those areas of being defensively responsible while
Mm,
on the ground. Rides it out, loses that round, comes back in round two, looks great.
yeah. Mm,
Um, it was very clear that I think out of all the fights on this card, out of all the fighters, we talked about the Utah effect. It took out a lot of guys last
yeah.
year. This year, I did not notice it near as much as I did with Jan Blachowicz. I think he was the one most affected by that Salt Lake City effect. It's sort of what we said though, Dominic, in the preview, that we didn't feel like Jan would be able to wrestle for 15 minutes
Yep.
in these elements. And really just considering the fact that I thought he may want the challenge in striking. I think if it was up to Blachowicz once the fight played out, I think he wanted to wrestle for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I think that's really what he wanted to do. I just think he looked unbelievably gassed in just the beginning of the second round.
I was shocked he didn't get finished. Really.
And I'm actually shocked on the reverse then that Pereira, who essentially carried the entire body weight of Blachowicz for over half of round one, did not really gas
Yeah.
out that much. And I think that's why this fight kind of went the way it did, Dominic. I think that's why you did not see Pereira really step on that gas and explode into some of those shots like he's able to do, is because I think he was looking to keep himself going for a full
Yep.
15 minutes. And actually he did. And yeah, he did start to slow down in the third round, but I think considering he had on 20 extra pounds here, well, more than that, but he was fighting at a weight
Yeah.
class 20 pounds heavier. I think he held up really well. That's one
Oh
thing
yeah.
you would be concerned about with the guy adding on weight is how's he fare with his cardio? And I thought he did a very good job at that. So round two, clear Pereira round. And it
Sure.
looks like Pereira's gonna really just take this thing over in round three and maybe get a finish. Not really what happens. And while I'm watching it live, Dominic, I see them kind of going back and forth, and I'm like, man, Blachowicz is actually kind of landing some good shots here. Gets the takedown late, and I did have a betting bias here because I did have bets both ways in this fight, but
No.
my
Yeah.
Pereira bet was for him to win under 1.5 rounds. Blachowicz, I had to win by submission or decision. So obviously, I'm kind of selfishly
Yeah.
rooting for Blachowicz at this point. And I was like, he might have done enough to win that third round because I felt like it was very close.
It was.
So then the split decision comes. Pereira gets his hand raised. Blachowicz looks pissed. And I'm thinking in my head, oh boy, I bet people are pissed online. I bet everybody's going back and forth.
Robbery.
I bet
Robbery.
there's I bet robberies all over. And I'm like, I was like, I kind of scored it for Blachowicz. But I was obviously not thinking robbery, but I was like, man, this is gonna be a rough fight
Mm-hmm.
for Twitter. And then I got on there and
Yeah.
crickets,
Yeah.
nothing. Everybody was all on the same page. Yep, Pereira won that fight. I'm like, wow. Shows what
Civilization
I know.
Pete.
It's sort of like the opposite of the Kaikar France Amir Albazi fight from a couple
Yeah.
months ago, where it was very close in that fight, but it felt like everybody was unanimously on
Yeah.
Kaikar France and Amir
Yeah.
Albazi got his hand raised. So not sure why that is, because I feel like it was so close, and I'm a little surprised that there wasn't more Blachowicz riders. I think partly, not that you can't score for Pereira regardless. Don't get me wrong. I do wonder if the visual of Blachowicz looking super gassed in rounds
Played
2
a
and 3
factor.
played a
Yeah.
factor. I'm just spitballing here again. No robbery here. I feel for Blachowicz. That's 2 tough ones in a row to have to swallow. I know the first one was a draw, but unfortunately for him, he put himself in a bad situation by sort of admitting he lost, at least saying he lost
Yeah.
after the fight, when really I thought it was a draw. But
Yeah.
neither here nor there. Pereira does get his hand raised. I thought Dominic, this was Pereira, maybe a new nickname here, the beefy 5-layer burrito, because the man is showing more and more layers to this game.
Yeah.
He's never going to be, in my opinion, he's never going to be formidable on the ground.
Right.
He's
Right.
never going to be offensively some juggernaut,
It's just
but
too
he
late.
doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
And what he showed here was that he is at least competent enough to keep himself out of danger while he's there. And I think that that's enough to where you have to give him a great edge, or not an edge, but you have to give him a great chance of winning against almost anybody at the top of this division.
Oh yeah.
And all eyes are on the former champion Jiri Prochazka, vacant title fight. I hope we get to see it maybe December,
I would
maybe
imagine.
January, something like that. Dominic, give me your kind of early thoughts on that fight. Like, how do you
Oh.
feel? Do you think the wild sort of creativity of the striking of Prohaska could cause fits for a guy like Pereira, who at times shows such patience, like he did here, like he did against Bruno Silva,
Yeah.
but also has some explosive hooks and has such great technique in his background in kickboxing? Like, do you think that almost the consistency of Pereira would end up being a big issue for Prohaska, or do you think Prohaska could cause a lot of issues with that dynamic and wild style he has?
Yeah, man, this fight is sick. And the point you make about if Yuri, how it will be for Alex to be against Yuri's crazy, wild striking. Yuri's always going to cause issues and problems with the way that he approaches fights, and he can do that to Alex for sure. But I think more so it plays into Alex's favor, being such a methodical, technical counter striker that can spot openings and all of his opponents, even against guys like Israel Adesanya, high-level strikers. I think it helps him that Yuri can be such a wild man. Not that Yuri can't win, but I think that's what makes this fight so interesting is you have 2 dynamic, powerful strikers, but they do it in so many different ways. That's why it's so intriguing. I think it's one of the best, most exciting light heavyweight fights, especially title fights that we've had in years. It feels like the opening odds, I'm sure when it gets announced, will be very interesting to spot. Yuri has not fought in a very long time. He's coming off of a shoulder injury that was very bad. How's he going to look? Is he going to change up his fight style because of Alex and kind of come in a little bit more methodical in his own way? There's so many things that make this fight amazing, and I like seeing the community being excited about it as a whole. I think it adds that much more pizzazz on it, if you will. So I think it's a sick fight. I think there's path to victory for both. I can't envision that fight not being exciting for no matter how short or long it goes. What do you think? Does Yuri's wildness cause problems for Alex, or you kind of side with me where that kind of opens up more opportunities for Alex to maybe counter him?
I think this is going to be a very dangerous fight for Yuri Prohaska.
Mm,
Um, the only element here that I think sort of saves Yuri is he's a pretty durable guy.
he is. Yeah.
He'll take a lot of shots. You saw the Glover fight, right? Absolute war. Even the Dominic Reyes fight, war. He'll go to war with people, but he's not getting dropped. He's not getting. I mean, he'll get hurt. He'll get
Yeah.
rocked, but he finds a way to keep pushing through that and finding new ways to deliver some offense while being rocked. And
Mm-hmm.
against Pereira, I could see a world where Alex kind of dominates the first couple rounds, but then Jiri doesn't really show to slow down
Yeah.
either. And maybe Pereira will start to slow down in rounds 3, 4, 5. And Prochazka really steps on the gas and keeps coming and maybe catches Pereira a couple times. So my immediate lean is pretty heavily Pereira.
Yeah.
And I love Jiri. You know, Dominic, the struggle is going to be which full violence shirt am I going to wear for that fight? I bought my Jiri Prochazka shirt is here. I'd have it. I ordered the Alex Pereira Boogeyman shirt. Which one am I going to wear, Dom? Do I flip a coin? Do I wear one on Friday, one on Saturday? Depending on who I bet on, maybe I wear that Saturday.
True. Switch it every round. But what if the fight's only one
I'm
round?
going to ask you an interesting question. Guess the odds. Like, what do you think the odds would be for that fight? Do you think Jiri gets the nod as the favorite, or is Pereira the favorite for that fight?
I think being that Alex was an underdog against Jan, I know it was his debut and there were questions about it that probably led to it, and Jan beating Izzy. But I think he would be an underdog again. I think it would be honestly similar odds. Maybe he comes in around plus 110, plus 120. Maybe Jiri on the comeback minus 140-ish, minus 150. I can't see it getting much more wide than that. I think Jiri will be the favorite. And yeah, what do you think? Are you leaning heavier for Jiri? Do you think Alex comes in favorite?
I was trying to find something real quick, see if there was any odds out there for that fight. It does not appear anywhere has it.
Yeah.
So far, I'm just seeing potential odds for like Jamal Hill, Jiri Prochazka. It looks like Alex Pereira would be a plus 135 to take on Israel Adesanya right now, but
Okay.
oh God, man.
I'd say it'd be close to the same as this one then.
I think, yeah, but they ended up being a pick 'em by the time they walked in
true.
Saturday. Like a lot of money started to come in on Pereira, I think, towards the end of the week. Yeah, I would say it's probably a pick 'em, maybe even Pereira a slight favorite. I believe Pereira might be the favorite here. I think was Jiri was the favorite against Glover. I do remember
I think
that.
relatively large. I can't remember for sure.
Somewhat, maybe. But I'm going to go with Pereira being the favorite.
Yeah.
If there is a favorite, but I could definitely see a pick 'em.
Mm-hmm. I feel like that's deserving at most.
I wish there would have been lines out for that.
Yeah.
That would have been kind of cool to see. But anyways, Dominic, let's move on to the rest of UFC 291. Derrick Lewis.
Oh, man.
I mean, what a legend. This man must be protected at all costs, Dominic.
Yeah.
Back against the ropes. Lost, 4 of his last 5. The only win in there, Chris Dawkins, who now doesn't even fight at heavyweight.
Yeah.
He's going up against Marcos Rogerio de Lima, who has those kind of layers to his game that you thought could give Lewis fits. And Derrick Lewis comes in there, says, fuck it.
A flying knee, Noah.
A flying knee, lands flush, knocks out Rogerio de Lima in 33 seconds. And I don't know what's more iconic, the flying knee to set up that finish or the post-fight celly.
Yeah.
Pants come off.
Of course.
The DX crotch chops.
Yeah. Yeah.
Throws his cup into the stands.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, like, if you're a fan, like, what do you do with a used cup? Like,
you got to frame it and put it on the wall. I don't know how you can frame a cup, but find a way.
What would you if a cup landed at your feet, like if Derrick Lewis's used cup landed at your feet, Dominic, are you actually taking it home with you and like framing it?
Oh yeah. Do you maybe even take a drink out of it afterwards?
You're disgusting.
Okay.
I want you to know. I want you to know that we might be best friends, but also I'm so disgusted at what you just said. I am chucking that shit back into the cage. But no, Derrick Lewis,
golly, man.
iconic.
What a moment, right?
Derrick Lewis's wife was probably freaking out watching that. He said, "Get ready, baby girl. I'm about to come home and rearrange some guts," or whatever he said. I mean, this is a family man, Derrick Lewis. He has come a long way from where Ronda Rousey's fine ass at.
Yeah, man.
What did you make of it all, Dominic? I mean, what a performance for Derrick Lewis.
That's Derrick Lewis. That is the most Derrick Lewis. Well, flying knee aside, that was the most Derrick Lewis thing ever.
And wasn't he tied with, didn't someone recently tie him for the
Matt
knockouts?
Brown.
Yes,
they were tied.
UFC, so now he takes back first place.
He took the lead. Matt Brown tweeted that night and said, "So does that mean I have to do a flying knee next time I fight?" So, man, I mean, it just felt good to see him get a win, right? He needed it. He'd been struggling, getting finished a lot in all these fights, first round finishes. And this was a proper step back. And the way that he did it feels like he's right back in there. Derrick Lewis, the number, top 10 heavyweight, he's back. I don't know what comes next for him and how much more he has left in the tank. But God, I'm here for the ride. I'm here for the ride until he rides off into the sunset.
Let's talk about a couple of those options, Dominic, because Derrick Lewis gets on the mic afterwards. He says a lot of really funny stuff, like I just said about his wife, about, did you plan to throw that flying knee? Hell no. Just came out through some bullshit. Great stuff, great lines. But he threw in this nugget of information that immediately when I heard it, I went, oh my God, we may have something here, Dominic. And that is that he is a free agent.
Yeah. Forgot about that part.
He is a free agent.
Yeah.
We have been wondering, Dominic, what free agent heavyweights are out there? And you're telling me a man in Derrick Lewis, one of the bigger names in the heavyweight division that you can have, a guy who constantly makes viral moments, who is coming off of a viral moment right there, is a free agent.
Who's looking for free agents right now, no?
If you are the PFL, do you basically tell Derrick Lewis he can be the president of the company if he comes and fights for you?
Yeah, probably.
Do you offer him the chairman? Ngannou's the head of or the chair
PFL
or whatever,
Africa.
PFL Africa. Do you offer that for Derrick Lewis for
he's just the chairman.
Chairman of the PFL heavy balls division or something? I don't know. Just make something up.
Yeah.
I understand the first fight's awful. It's one of the worst fights of all time.
Yeah, terrible.
But you have a story there, Dominic, that you can touch on. It doesn't even have to involve the quality of that first fight. Yeah. Derrick Lewis won that fight.
Yeah.
You have your huge free agent signing in Francis Ngannou. Derrick Lewis, big star in his own right, who just reignited his flame here. You have to get him. You have to bring every resource possible to sign him. But also, Dominic, he kind of said that he was hoping to re-sign with the UFC.
And how that was a big way to get a contract with him. Yeah.
But so I understand that, but UFC probably ain't offering him the $2 million minimum that an opponent of Ngannou's would make. So what do you think is going to shake up here? Do you think there's a chance that he actually takes maybe one fight with the PFL, wins or loses, and then maybe he goes back to the UFC? Do you think the UFC would really not want him to do that and therefore maybe pay him more money or play hardball and say, if you leave, you ain't coming back? I mean, what do you think's going to happen here?
Yeah, I feel like if he leaves, he won't be able to come back. Man. The PFL, I'm sure the moment they heard him on the mic say that,
their Twitter posted
lawyers.
About it.
Yeah.
Their Twitter
they're good at that, doing that.
Yeah, they're like, oh, I heard, or when you hear heavyweight free agent or something.
That'd be huge. That's just what they need. We've talked time and time again now about Francis, and he's having the boxing fight with Tyson, but who's he going to fight in the PFL in the super fight division next year on pay-per-view? None of the guys in the PFL are just big enough names, and the biggest names have all popped for steroids. So Derrick Lewis is the guy, and he's a free agent. So they're going to try and throw the bag at him, I'm sure. Part of me feels like Derrick won't want to do it, but money talks, and he's a prize fighter, and he loves getting bonuses and getting money. So I could, in a world with Francis and Derrick too in the PFL, wow, I'm going to go a dead even 50-50 on how I'm leaning. I could see him staying in the UFC, retiring there because he's been there for years and years. Or maybe he just gets that one fight with Ngannou, gets millions, and then he just retires after that even. That's where my head's at. I'm 50-50 split. I can't lean aside. Are you leaning aside?
Initially, so like right at this moment, considering all we know right now, I'm leaning 65% he re-signs with the UFC,
Yeah.
35 he goes to the PFL.
Yeah.
It seems like it makes perfect sense for him to do the PFL thing, and I think it does. And you look at him, and he's a guy that's not motivated by legacy.
Right.
He's not motivated by leaving an impact on this sport. Dominic, he admits he doesn't give a shit about MMA. Like, he doesn't watch MMA.
Yeah.
They asked him that question about who is his top 3 BMFs, and he's like, man, you're asking the wrong guy this question.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know anybody. Like, he fully embraces that.
Yeah.
He does it because it makes him money. So when you consider the motivation there, he really embodies being a prize fighter more than most.
Mm-hmm.
You would think it makes perfect sense. Go get your bag in the PFL, and then if you win, all of a sudden you're looking at maybe a rematch with Ngannou, or maybe you go back to the UFC and all of a sudden you're an even bigger deal than when you left.
If he
Maybe
wins,
maybe you get boxing opportunities. I know it sounds crazy, but I'm just saying, they're making a big deal about Ngannou. If you go in there and knock out Ngannou,
dude, that would be crazy.
PFL probably dies with it. I mean, it seems like despite all that, he's kind of a company man. Like, he kind of loves being under the UFC. And I really want to believe the UFC wouldn't do that with him, that they wouldn't say, well, if you go, you can't come back or something. Because, like, Nate Diaz left, right? And he's boxing Jake Paul, but Nate Diaz keeps saying when he's done with this boxing fight, he's coming back to the UFC.
Yeah.
So I sort of wish the UFC would kind of allow it to happen, because right now, let's say, right now, Derrick Lewis is like a bottom of the top 10 guy.
Yeah.
So if Ngannou beats him, that doesn't devalue your heavyweights in your
True.
Like, Ngannou was a heavyweight champion in the UFC. It's one thing if John Jones became a free agent and went over there, and then Ngannou beats him, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, Ngannou beat the UFC's best heavyweight. We're talking about Derrick Lewis, who is, I mean, just an awesome guy to have, but he's not one of the top heavyweights in the UFC heavyweight division. So I don't feel like the UFC is really, are risking a lot by having him, by him going over there. But I also think that they are a petty bunch, and they do not want this Ngannou thing to succeed. Do they maybe offer him a little bit more money to stay? I could see that.
Yeah.
Maybe they give him some more, instead of more money per fight, maybe they guarantee him some fights.
More,
In that way, like, maybe the total amount of fights he would take would make his purse more than what he could make from that one PFL bout. I don't know. They're going to find a way, I think, ultimately to bring him back.
Yeah.
If you're the PFL, you got to find a way.
You got to try. You got to try.
Go for it. This is your opening. This is what you've been waiting for.
Yep.
It's time. It's now.
And that would be them taking the 2 biggest free agents the UFC's really had. Really 3 if you even count Shane. But like in the past couple years, Francis has been like the biggest free agent the UFC had specifically. They took him. Derrick is a pretty damn big free agent.
That's true.
If they take
him.
Yeah. Woo, damn.
So that does wonder, like, a lot of times the UFC like to have the next contract already signed on the dotted line before you step in there the last time. I wonder if they thought if he loses here, that's it.
Yeah.
Not bring him back.
And now he won.
Now he won. So all of a sudden, and he won in great fashion.
Yeah. Oh, man.
And I think the only fight you can do if he stays in the UFC is Biggie Boy, right? You got to do him and Rosenstruik.
Oh, yeah. Haven't fought.
Haven't fought. Big power.
Yeah.
Let's bang.
Probably going to be a main event, right? You know, we know.
Yeah,
But
man, well, I don't know. Derrick Lewis, when's the last time he was
you're
on
right.
Fight Night main event? That was
You don't
actually
like 'em.
probably,
Yeah.
you know what, he did it with Dawkins actually, but before that, I think it was our episode 1, Dom.
Yeah, with Alexei Olenek.
Yeah.
And he's
You know
literally
what?
said he doesn't want 5-round fights. So,
Actually,
yeah.
he does. Actually, he does more main events than I realized. He did it with Spivak too.
Yeah, true. That one was the one you didn't like.
In my head, I'm thinking, yeah. No,
Yeah.
bad. But
I would do that though.
he does. He's all.
Gotcha.
They seems like they like to put him on pay-per-views a lot.
Yeah, you're right.
I could see them in 2024 making a priority to take a pay-per-view to Texas and put him on there.
Featured
And,
bout or
he's
something.
cursed in Texas, so he'd probably lose. But
Yeah.
at least he'd be there.
Yeah.
And but it also they love putting Biggie Boy in main events, so
Yeah.
maybe it's a match made in heaven for that reason.
All right.
So I think we have our directions. It seems
Yeah.
like the more lucrative one is that PFL contract, but it seems
One
like
would think.
Derrick kind of wants to stay, weirdly enough. So
Yeah.
I'm excited though to see how that plays out.
How can you not be after that Saturday?
Wait, and I just love it for Derrick, man, because this could have been a very somber episode for this portion.
Mhm.
Instead, it's half somber, and that's because the other half is Tony Ferguson.
Yeah.
God, that just felt like a gross segue. I didn't even like it. Bobby Green submits Tony Ferguson with 6 seconds left in the fight. Dominic gets it done round 3, 4 minutes, 54 seconds left. Not a single knockdown occurred during this fight, and I just want everybody to know that because that was news to me prior to recording today. So if any of you thought there was 1, 2, 3, 4 knockdowns, nope, there was 0.
Yep.
They had to be knocked through the center of the octagon into
the
whatever
crust
is
of the
underneath.
earth.
Yes. Yeah. So Bobby Green gets to win, Dominic. We knew this was a possibility. Tony Ferguson, a huge underdog. I think he was the biggest underdog on the card. Well,
I think he was.
Yeah,
plus
I think
300.
Yeah. I know you put a bet on Tony and you kind of felt like the value was there, right? Like at the end of the day, he's fighting Bobby Green, who is solid, but it was a big jump down from where Tony had been fighting his last 4 or 5 fights, which is the losing streak we're talking about. What did you make of it? Were the flashes of old Tony there, or was it like, no, that you don't even recognize the old Tony Ferguson anymore?
I think in round 1 there were a couple small flashes,
perhaps,
but albeit flashes,
a
knockdown.
Yeah, perhaps when the knockdown occurred that didn't occur. Okay.
Yeah, but I couldn't help but just see so slow, and he just couldn't really keep up. And as the longer the fight went on, Bobby Green's a great boxer. You can't take that away from the guy. His jab is just so good, and he was piecing up Tony, and Tony couldn't really. Defensively, he was slow, and offensively, he was slow. And I think that's what made it really hard to watch. What more can you say? I mean, it's 6 straight losses. Now this one, the biggest step back in competition that Tony had taken. Bobby Green did what he had to do. I didn't have Bobby Green by submission on the bingo card for 2023. I'll tell you that much, especially against Tony, even on this losing streak. But he did it. And, not only did he do it, he put Tony Ferguson to sleep. So that it keeps piling on, and it just gets worse and worse. So a great moment for Bobby Green, a somber one for Tony. Again, we don't like to say when people should retire and stuff. We don't do this game. We just talk about this game, but he has nothing left to prove. And you don't want to see what good he had of his legacy continue to be butchered by this losing streak. And if he takes another one and another one after that, I don't know. I don't know what the conversations are with him and his team and with the UFC, but I just don't even know how the UFC could offer more fights at this point. I don't know.
Let's talk about reality, Dominic. He's not going to retire. He's not going to. So. He's already said he's not going to. He claims the eye poke hindered his eyesight, which, I mean, I think that's true. That could be possible for sure. I don't think that necessarily changes the fact that he did look much slower, like you said. It looked like when in order to get into the pocket, he had to sort of lunge in with his shots rather than what we used to see from him. The volume wasn't there.
Yep.
I did not see any flashes of the old Tony.
Mm.
But the reality is that Tony is just gone. He's
Yeah.
been gone. I've been holding out hope that we may see a little bit of it. The last flash of it was in the Michael Chandler fight, and I think after he got knocked out cold by Chandler, that was it. That was it. It was all gone. Now, with that being said, he's not going to retire. He does get paid a lot of money, I'm sure, to be a guy who is at this point fighting unranked competition. That's the UFC's choice. If they don't want him to go elsewhere, then you have to give him the best fight you can get. The best fight in terms of like, okay, this is a fight that is sellable with him in it, but it's also a step back from Bobby Green, because I think that's apparent that it needs to be a step back from Bobby Green. So I saw it on Twitter. I think the Paddy Pimblett fight makes a lot of sense, Dominic.
Oh, wow. Wow.
I think it makes a lot of sense. Paddy does have the capabilities to do damage on the feet, but he is not like a pure boxer like Bobby Green.
You're right.
Someone who definitely could submit Tony Ferguson for sure.
Yeah.
But I think maybe if you don't want to do Paddy, maybe you do just give him someone like, I don't know, Ricky Glenn, or I know Ricky Glenn just got announced.
What if he fought like Jim Miller?
Well, Bobby Green wants that fight, I think, at
Okay.
UFC 300.
Okay.
No, actually, I think the Jim Miller fight's really bad for him. Jim Miller
Yeah, I was
like
kind
a
of
beast.
thinking that when I said it,
But no, I've heard people say that, and I'm like, no, I don't really. The Paddy fight, it's styles, right? Like, would Paddy beat Jim Miller? Maybe. But stylistically, I think that Paddy is a safer fight for Tony to take. Because you got to be focused. I know responsibilities on a lot of different people here, but I'm just saying what I want to see. If Tony's going to continue to fight, I don't want to see him getting pieced up on the feet. A guy who's already taken a lot of damage. He's had some issues out of the octagon. We know about him. I'm not going to repeat them here, but give him a matchup where, yes, it's still it's probably going to be equal competition, but someone who the threat's not exactly there. It's more in the jiu-jitsu, in the wrestling, whatever it might be.
Yeah. That's an interesting fight.
That's what you got to do with these guys. If the UFC is going to refuse to, sort of make them help themselves or help them help themselves, whatever, then this is the next best option. I don't think having him fight like a Drew Dober or, I'm trying to think of some other options. Like, I don't think guys like that, or
you're talking other seasoned vets though, right? In his boat, pretty much. And
I said Paddy Pimblett. I mean, I don't think
saying like you don't want to see those fights.
I don't mind to see him fight seasoned veterans, but I don't. I mean, it just depends on the matchup, Dominic. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
But Paddy is a guy who, if he beat Tony Ferguson, I think that would benefit him in a certain way.
Well, I was going to say, as a company, right? You're trying to still build Paddy. A win over Tony's a win over Tony. I could see it. I really could see it. I never thought about it, but I don't mind.
It's a sellable fight. It's a fight. If they put it in the UK somewhere, you could probably make that the co-main event.
Yeah.
Yeah. It seems like if he's going to, because I've done the same thing you're doing, Dominic. Every time a guy fights who it feels like that's it, I come on here and I'm like, oh, it's a somber, like, I don't want to see him fight anymore. I don't want to tell him to retire. It's this internal battle, and I'm just tired of having it because we know he's not going to retire. This is Tony Ferguson. I don't think he'll ever really retire. It's about when the UFC decides they don't want to let him continue fighting, and then he'll go fight elsewhere and fight lower competition and whatever.
And box and
So this is the best you can do with the situation you have.
Well said. Well said.
What next do you want to go over here, Dominic?
Just finish off the main card, right? Because Kevin Holland, wow. The man can defend takedowns. That's for sure. He's the 170-pound Kevin Holland is a very, very solid fighter, and he's now a top 15 fighter at
Well, let's cut to
170
the
pounds.
chase. Let's cut to the chase on this one.
Of
He
course.
looked great, right? I mean, checked every box that like this dude can legitimately be
He
the
really
player
did.
at 170 that we
Yeah.
thought he could have been even earlier in his career at 185. But it seemed like this is the division for him. Post fight, he gets on the microphone, Dominic. He says, I'm trying to eat what I want to eat. I want to go back to 185 pounds.
Oh, man.
Is he just kind of
man.
destined to just never really make good on his potential? Like, is that just, do you think is the next fight going to be 185 pounds? Like, do you think he ends up just taking a fight maybe very soon? You know, that way it's like he doesn't have a ton of time to cut.
Yeah.
Is that
I
what you
could see that.
foresee?
I could see him definitely taking a short notice fight and fighting up at 185, but man, there's potential here, I think. I really think there is at 170 pounds. I think that is his weight class. He's a long, rangy guy. I can't foresee him cutting that much weight to get to 170. It's not like he's a humongous fighter. And I just think there's more potential for him there. I think there's a very good chance he could climb those ranks, especially this version of him that we saw. But if he goes to 185, you know, again, he's long and rangy, he's tall, so in that way, he's not like smaller than middleweights, but he really is a lot smaller. He's not as muscular and thick, and the strength isn't as prominent there. We've seen it, especially in like the grappling matchups with Vettori and with Brunson. So, I mean, as a fan looking out for what I think can come of his career, 170 is the move. But maybe Noah, he doesn't make good on that potential that we believe that he has, and he does decide to go to 185 and just do fun fights. You know, we talked about it on Friday even. He's like got the Donald Cerrone kind of aura around him where he's fighting anybody anywhere, doesn't really care what their ranking is, who their name is. Maybe that's just who Kevin Holland is, and I respect it. I really do. But damn, I want to see this guy. I want to see that potential, what he can make of it. That's all I want.
If his next fight's at 170, Jack Della Maddalena's the fight.
Oh,
yes
man.
No?
Ooh-wee.
Is that the fight? That feels like the fight.
You won't
Feels
hear me
like
complain about it.
Great style fight. Jack Della Maddalena had some questions brought up with his last fight. Very close. Had to kind of gut out that win against a short notice opponent. Seems like that is a very interesting one for both guys to take. Kevin going to have that really good reach advantage, but Jack probably the better technical striker, I guess you would say. Maybe a little bit more power, all that. So I think that's the one. If he goes up to 185 pounds, call me crazy because I know that stylistically this is a very yin and yang fight, like opposites here. Maybe Paul Craig?
Oh, the newly ranked. Yeah, true.
Paul Craig gonna really look for those takedowns, look for submissions off his back even. Kevin Holland is very good with submissions himself, but going to have that power and reach to try to keep Paul Craig away from him. And we know Paul Craig doesn't typically do that well with the heavy strikers. But if he's going to stick at 185 pounds, Dominic, I'm kind of looking around, who's guys that feel like they're in his range if he's going to move back up. I don't really want to see him fight Brendan Allen because I kind of want to see Brendan Allen take on a tougher or a guy more up ahead in the rankings. So a guy like Paul Craig, maybe Chris Curtis.
I saw people say that one. Yeah.
Chris Curtis would be fun. That's really all I got. I think at the end of the day, though, 170 is the division that I want to see him stay at. But it's his career, man. It's whatever he wants to do. And I think there's fun fights regardless. But selfishly, even though it shouldn't be selfishly, because I think it's just what ultimately it feels like is best for him in order to get him to like really potentially make a title run here. I think that's not out of the question.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I love that. If he does do middleweight, I love him and Paul Craig. I think that it would be the fight.
A lot of people may not like that because
that's sick.
The style clash there, but I think
that's what's cool about it. Yeah,
because Kevin Holland's like the smaller guy at 185 pounds, Paul Craig a bigger guy at 185 pounds. So, but both clearly have a an advantage over the others. So,
and my God, if he stays at 170 and fights Jack, I'm all over that fight. So I hope he stays at 170. We'll see. Let us know what you guys think. Do you want him at 170 or?
Oh,
up
I
at
think
middleweight.
everybody's gonna answer 170
Yeah,
for that one.
I would hope so.
Perhaps our biggest standout of the prelims, Dominic. How about Gabriel Bonfim with
He's
his
an animal.
1 minute 13 submission over Trevin Giles? The Bonfim brothers really made that splash back in January. Ishmael Bonfim, of course, lost his last fight.
Mm-hmm.
But Gabriel Bonfim, man, the way he locked on that submission, it was so fast. And he's a big guy. This is a welterweight, but he's a big welterweight.
Yeah.
And he locked that submission in so clean. Like he looked like a flyweight locking in a submission. Gets it done. I'm impressed with him, that's for sure. He's explosive. He's talented everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
A real prospect here for 170 pounds at the tail end of 2023.
15-0, 15 finishes. Just what welterweights and wanting. Some new fresh blood on the outside looking in. This guy's got very good potential, I believe.
Yeah, and I want to see him maybe take on like one or two more fights before we're getting to ranked competition. Like just let him
25.
Yeah,
no rush.
No rush.
Yeah.
Anybody else you want to give a shout out to before we move on?
I know I'll just kind of say this because we finished with it on Friday. Miranda Maverick did have that win that she needed. She did get a finish. She got a submission in the third round against Priscila Cachoeira. I posted on Twitter. I'm just having this internal like, what is the potential? What can she do at 125? She's had good moments where she shows she can finish and do good things, but then in her losing efforts, especially like the last one, they don't look as good, but it has been against good competition. Like I'm just struggling to see her potential, but I believe that there is something there. We love women's flyweight, the 125-pound division. So I'd like to see her put it all together finally instead of these off and on type nights out at the office. Maybe this finish here will kind of set something up for her. So I just wanted to bring that up since we did discuss it on Friday.
I'm taking the approach of I think she still has a lot of potential, but that she is just more raw than a lot of her counterparts. And I think she's like, because what I'm trying to say is I think she's very young.
Yeah.
But I know she got like outclassed by Erin Blanchfield, who's even younger than her. Yeah. I just think she's less polished than some of her counterparts.
Sure.
Her youth shows through much more.
Man, that might be the perfect description.
Because Erin Blanchfield looks like a seasoned veteran in there,
and she's like 23. So
yeah, so there's levels, right? But I do think Miranda Maverick has a lot of potential. I think she can be a player in 125 pounds. But we may have a couple more performances like we've had previously before we can really see her realize it. That's kind of the risk you take when you invest in this real young talent. You know, you get sometimes a Charles Oliveira, though, who eventually makes that breakthrough and goes on that run and wins that title. But there was some growing pains to get there. There were the weight misses. There were the tap out losses. There were the knockout losses. It can go both ways. Then you can have on the other side an Edmund Shabazian or a Chase Hooper or somebody who sort of never really feels like they break out of that. But I think Miranda Maverick still has a lot of potential. It's just I don't really love kind of putting her up against some of her, the Macy Barbers and Erin Blanchfield.
With the other,
these are the women that you kind of want to be the future of your division. Why put that matchup together now when they're all kind of climbing up? Like let them
can happen later for greater stakes.
Yeah. And if you're going to give Miranda Maverick for her next fight, I saw someone toss this out. Let her fight our co-main winner from last weekend, Julia Stoliarenko. Let her take her on. Submission expert.
Okay.
Miranda Maverick, great wrestler, good ground and pound, good submissions as well.
I like that.
I think that's the kind of you need to let Miranda Maverick kind of build herself back up.
Yeah, you don't need to throw her in.
She looked dominant. She looked really good here against Cachoeira. I'll say that. And I think that's pretty much it, Dominic. Unless you have anybody else, we'll move on.
That's it.
Bellator versus Rizin 2. Dominic's really carrying the load for this one. I'll just ask you like this, Dominic. What was your biggest standout of Bellator versus Rizin 2?
I mean, look no further than a Magomedov making Danny Sabatello tap out in the first round. Come on, man. This was a fight that was it was great that they made this. First of all, you guys know my rant about Danny's last fight. I'm not going to get into it. Good job, Bellator, on this one. And it only took you collabing with another major player in the MMA space to put on a fight that made sense between two fighters.
Even though they're both Bellator fighters.
Yeah, exactly. So here we go. Number 4, number 5, grappler's dream. If you love watching those types of fights, and we didn't get to see much of it. We got to see 3 minutes 55 seconds of it, and Magomedov gets a huge win, gets himself back on track, puts Danny Sabatello in the loss column. 2 of his last 3 now losses because he lost to Rafion Stott. So it was a big moment. I feel like for Magomed, I need to look at Magomed's last fights because I'm kind of blanking, but he obviously came up short against like Patchy Mix, for example, in that Grand Prix. So he's been faltering when he had this potential and hype around him. And I still think the potential's there. This is a guy that is a legitimate threat and a player. He needed to show it. He did it against a top 5 guy who has fought for a title. That's easily the biggest moment in, performance, I feel like, on this MMA, the Bellator version of this card for sure.
Yeah, no, 100%. I was very shocked to see the way that fight ended when I saw it on Twitter, to see Sabatello kind of get submitted like that.
Yeah.
Sabatello's a guy who does really need to work on his offense. Like, he has great wrestling, but not a lot of ground and pound, not a lot of submissions.
Yep.
And here, I don't know if that's really what, held him back, because it seemed like it kind of happened pretty quick. But again, it's just, this is going to be something he's going to have to fight off more and more in his career. If he's not able to finish a fight, to inflict damage the way that you really need to nowadays to win a fight, then he's going to have to really depend on his wrestling control time to get him victories. And that's a risky thing to do, man. He's got that personality to get him big fights, but we're going to need to see a little bit more from him if he's going to sustain it as being a top guy whenever Bellator inevitably gets sold to whoever. If he's going to remain relevant, we're going to need to see more out of him. But for Magomedov, this was huge for him, because it felt like when we started the podcast, Dominic, he was one of the guys that we thought could be the future of this division for Bellator, who had so much potential. He's got that Dagestani heritage that everybody is all the rave nowadays, and had that wrestling. But he had eaten a couple losses. The Rafael Stotts loss. He lost to Patchy Mix.
I mean, it's the top dogs, right?
So you kind of wondered if maybe there was a ceiling to how good he could be.
Yep.
But to get the win over Danny Sabatello, one of the biggest loudmouths in the company, I think that's kind of gave him that boost he needed to get another big fight. Let me ask you about, before we move on, like the main event, Patricky Pitbull. Do you think that win, I know it was short notice, not even at 155 pounds, but did that win inspire any confidence that, maybe maybe Patricky Pitbull can make a run in this lightweight Grand Prix and perhaps even win the whole thing? Or do you still kind of view him as maybe lower on the list of potential winners of this thing?
I still think he would be lower on that spectrum to win for sure, but it was a good performance nonetheless. I know it's harder to come out with takeaways, catch weight, short notice opponent, all that, but he looked good. He fought intelligently. He did what he had to do against a younger, up-and-coming type fighter here. He finishes it with a leg kick, by the way, which is absolutely... There's something about leg kick finishes that make me just feel woozy. It's like I'm seeing somebody's arm snap in the octagon. But he fought intelligently. He did damage, but didn't over-exhaust himself. He didn't rush in for a finish, and then he had a perfectly timed finish here in the third round with the leg kick. So he showed enough to where he could make noise, but to win it all, to put that whole run together, I have to pause there. But I think he can put up good fights, and maybe he can pull off the upset in the underdog run. But yeah, it was a good performance. I feel like he needed that for this Grand Prix. We'll see what Patricky can do.
Unfortunately for his brother, I know this wasn't on the card that that you got to watch, but his brother got knocked out. Pretty big upset.
It was a big knockout.
And the Patricio was kind of a weird one. Took this fight on like 4 days notice. It was at like 155 pounds or 56 pounds, whatever it was. It was fought in the Rizin ring. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a cage. He gets knocked out. This was about a month after he had lost that fight with Sergio Pettis, where he was going for his third division title, which would have been a huge mark for his legacy. So then a weird one here, and he gets knocked out, like, brutally.
Yeah.
Not sure if do we need more time to kind of let that digest and see what he does next and go from there, or is this are there maybe some red flags here that you're kind of wondering about?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think in hindsight, bad decision to probably take this fight on short notice with really no upside. What was the upside here? I didn't really see it.
Yeah.
And and now you take a brutal knockout loss. I think it could hinder his future. Yes. I think that was a fight that did not need to happen, and he took it, and they, him and Bellator in a way kind of paid for that fight happening. But I hope he can recover. I'd like to see it. But now you don't even know what weight class he's going to fight in either. So who knows what the guy's going to do.
Yeah. Well, with that, Dominic, let's move on to Blazin Bets. I know, Dominic, I didn't have it on the script today. Dominic said, no, we need to talk about it.
Give me my moment.
Yep. I'm sure that if the roles were reversed, he would have also been like, yeah, let's talk about it.
Me losing again. Yep.
But instead, Dominic, you had a great week. I'll give you props. You lost one bet.
Yeah.
You had a big week for you. This was probably your best week of the year, I would say. I know you've had a tough year with MMA.
Yeah.
So went back to the drawing board. You came out with the lineup that, I'll be honest, when I looked at it, I was like, I mean, it doesn't seem like you really changed didn't feel like you were really changing it up that much, even though that's what you said you were trying to do. It felt like it was kind of the bets I would expect from you. But it ended up working out.
It did.
Was there something to take away from this that it's like, okay, I'm going to continue looking at the lineups or looking at the plays, the potential plays like this moving forward?
Yeah, I feel like I need to do a better job at committing to, if I'm confident, commit to it. Put a unit down, put a unit and a half, like for Alex Pereira. Put 2 units on CJ Vergara. If I'm feeling it and I'm seeing the signs, the styles, everything lines up, don't just put a unit. Go with it. Be confident with it. And especially, when you get a guy like CJ Vergara, for example, at minus 162, 1 unit down is only going to pay out so much more. You put the 2 units on it, you can at least get over a unit positive off of that win. So I feel like confidence is going to be the key here moving forward. I closed the gap back to 7-5. I believe that's what it is, right? 7-5.
7-5.
So I'm trying so hard to get this fucking thing tied up, because then, and once I feel like if I can get it tied, Noah, I may just be able to run away with this thing. I don't know. Maybe I can find that groove and really get going here. That's what I'm thinking can happen. But I got to win 2 more weeks first to tie this thing up. 7-7 is the goal, and then from there we ride off with a big victory. But it was a great week. Pay-per-views last year did not treat me well. This whole year hasn't really treated me well, but the last 2 I feel like I haven't done as bad. So plus 4.85, 5-1 record. The only loss was Tony Ferguson. I just had to take a chance on it. I knew what could happen if he lost. So,
well, I'll just say this, Dominic. My lineup ended up going negative. Am I crazy though? I kind of liked what I was doing though, with like the 2 sides.
Sure, yeah, some hedging in a way, yeah.
It didn't work out this time. Like the Dustin Poirier 2 units ended up just like, Jan Blachowicz by decision or submission. That was possibly there. Apparently the parlay didn't hit, but I feel like that was a great bet.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of feel like there might be something there, so I'm going to try it out at least 1 more week. We'll go from there. But yeah, congratulations, Dominic.
On to Nashville.
So with that, Dominic, we end our show only one way, and that's with closing statements. The point of the show where me and Dominic can talk about anything and everything MMA related or not. So Dominic, you got any closing statements for today?
I feel like I'm coming in today after that salsa, debate. I heard some, rufflings with some friends and whatnot. Jaden even said on the phone last night, actually, that, while she is not in the chunky side of the debate, she feels like a lot of people are. So, I feel like after that on Friday, I said my piece. I take a break for today and come with something.
Did anybody tell you that was like the worst question you've ever proposed? Was there any of that?
Not quite that nice, but I heard everybody that I talked to basically was on Team Chunky for what it's worth. So.
And your team not chunky? I don't even know.
Correct. And that's just because tomatoes are so.
Wow. Pretty harsh, Dom.
Yeah.
Yeah, the reason why I'm recording right here, by the way, everybody, I'm sitting on my floor. Computer's on my bed. I usually work in my mom's office. She was in the office today, but apparently she was only doing a half day in the office because she came in freaking she's ripping open the doors. Dom's in the middle talking. I'm like looking at the door like, holy shit. And she's like,
no, it was naked.
She's like, get out of here. I gotta work, damn it. I was like, oh, all right. So I ran up here to finish us out because I knew we didn't have much left to do. But
I like the backdrop though.
Yeah. Just get to hold the microphone and everything. It's real nice. But my name is Noah Baker. That's Dominic Sleeve. We are but just two of the below average Joes, and we'll see you guys on Monday.
Friday.